Welcome to the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, discussing all things audiobooks with the authors that write the stories and the narrators that perform them. Brought to you by Viviana, Enchantress of Books.
Hi everyone, welcome to season 3 of the Audiobook Lovin Podcast. Today I am chatting with author Rebecca Hefner, aka Ayla Ashler. So welcome to the podcast, Rebecca. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited, and it's, you write PNR under Rebecca, and then you write contemporary under Ayla. So we're going to have a lot of different fun conversations as far as characters and all that fun stuff and ideas. But why don't we start by having you tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been writing, and how you got started?
Sure. So, So again, thanks for having me. I love doing podcasts, and definitely ones focused on audiobooks because I love audiobooks. So I'm so happy to be here. So, So I live right outside of New York City along the Hudson River in New Jersey. And I actually grew up in Western North Carolina, but I moved up to the New York City area when I graduated college. So I've been here for a little bit over half my life now. I was in corporate America for quite a long time. I mean, many years, over a decade. And I always loved reading. And I was actually a sales rep. So I loved listening to audiobooks because I drove all the time. And I always wanted to become an author and tell my own stories. So about 4 years ago, I published my first book in November of 2018, and that was The End of Hatred. And that is the first book in my paranormal romance series, A Theory is Earth. And ever since then, I actually saved up a bunch of money at my corporate job so I could leave and become a full-time author. So
I love it.
That's what I do now. So I've been an author for about 4 years, almost 4 years. Yeah.
So you started writing paranormal under your name, Rebecca, but then you also started writing contemporary under Ayla. How did that come into play for you?
Yes. So The End of Hatred and my whole sort of world that I built under my paranormal romance series, that had been in my head for a long time. I actually started writing The End of Hatred back in 2003. And I actually that's when I got it copywritten, was back in 2003. So, I mean, I have had that book, on the burner for a long time. And I'd worked on it during my years as a corporate sales rep. And so when I, eventually decided to publish and find an editor and everything, that was definitely the first book I was going to publish. And I published a couple of books under Rebecca in that series. And then I wrote book 1 under Rebecca in another series. And then I just decided that I wanted to try something new. I wasn't sure if I was going to write contemporary romance because I love fantasy and sci-fi romance. But I just had this idea that came into my head of like a fake relationship story. That's one of my favorite tropes. Between these two people who lived in Manhattan, and that they were going to take each other home for fake dates for Christmas. And I was like, you know what, I'll write it. I'll keep it short, around 40,000 words, and I'll see. I'll just publish it under this other pen name and see if people like it. So that's what I did. I didn't claim Ayla Asher in the beginning, and I published my first book under that name, His Holiday Pact. And I was like, okay, if people don't like it, then no one will know it's me. So that's kind of how that came about. But the good news is that, knock on wood, I mean, I published that one in November of 2019, I believe. So the good news is that one had a good feedback. And I had people reaching out to me, like asking if I had other books. And I was like, oh, good. So I'll tell people I'm Rebecca and they could read those books. And then I guess I'll continue to write more books under Ayla. So I eventually started claiming both pen names together just because, and yes, Rebecca is a pen name as well, but that's my main pen name. But I decided that I would claim them both together. And that way, people would know it was me. And if they only read contemporary, they can read my Ayla stuff. If they only read PNR fantasy romance, they can read my Rebecca stuff. And if they read all genres of romance, which is, I read all genres of romance, then they can read everything under both names if they like.
Yeah. Well, there's like two camps when it comes down from an author's perspective about those pseudonyms. Some will do a separate name for separate genres and are quiet about it. Others are like, I would write everything under the one, but just to keep branding differently too, that's when they separate, but they yell it out the mountaintops that they're the same individual. And that way the readers will fall into the, I love your writing style, I don't care what it is.
Right.
And so that's where, so I'm kind of glad that you're doing that way, and that way people that are like, I love PNR, but sometimes I want a contemporary,
Yes.
and so, or then I'm in a bunch of my contemporary moves, but then I'm like, but I want my shifter, and then I go back.
Yes.
And I fall in love with the writing style of the author, either how they build the world or how they create the characters. And so having that option to jump around and still have the same love of that author, I'm like, yay.
Right. Yes. I'm the same way. Yeah. I like it. Or sometimes like you'll find out that somebody writes under a different name and you're like, oh, I didn't know that was them. Now I'm going to read all the stuff under their name.
I know.
Yeah,
it's like,
cool. Yeah.
You were keeping a secret. How dare you? Yeah, I know. It's a fun moment when that happens. The listeners get all excited and they're like, but we just want more. And I'm like, I know. And that's, it's, sometimes the readers and the listeners can get into trouble a little bit sometimes when the pseudonym is not being yelled out by the mountaintop.
Yes.
And the narrators, for whatever reason, wants, and I literally always say for whatever reason, because it's none of our business, we just have to respect them as to why they want to keep a real name or a separate pseudonym, separate. And a lot of the listeners would tell me, but Viviana, I just love their voice and I want more. And I'm like, I understand that, but just because I want the whole damn cake doesn't mean I get to eat it.
Right. Yes, very true.
Or that I should. It ain't healthy. So I go, if you happen to come across it, that's one thing, but keep it private, get excited or listen and endure, but don't be sharing it out there. So, but you are, shouting it from the mountaintop. So listeners and readers can get a little bit of everything from the PNR to the contemporary. So that's good. In your PNR world, do you focus specifically on the type of paranormal character, either shifters, and vampires, aliens, oh my, or do you just write the gamut?
Yes, that's a great question. So, because I know there's so many subgenres of PNR out there now, right? There's like the blue aliens and there's everything. Okay, so for Etherea's Earth, which is my flagship series, that is so basically Etherea's Earth is a parallel Earth to ours where humans exist, but they exist separately from the immortals. And the immortals are comprised of vampires and slayers. But I created this whole mythology where the vampires were created by this goddess Etheria, the vampires and the slayers, and they lived in peace for a long time, and they were made to be codependent upon each other. So the vampires had to drink the slayers' blood for sustenance. Instead of eating food, that was their food. That's what they ate. And in return, they protected the slayers. And then a lot of stuff goes down, and the vampires and the slayers fall into war. Now you can imagine how awful this is, because the vampires need slayer blood to survive. So they fall into this terrible war, and the vampires start raiding the slayer compounds to basically, kidnap slayer soldiers so that they can eat. And this goes on for 1,000 years. And basically where book one picks up is, and that's the book that I wrote forever before I finally got the nerve to publish it, is Miranda, who's the princess of the slayers, and Sathan, who is the king of the vampires. They have a common enemy who's this really bad guy named Crimeus. He's the dark lord of the demons. And they decide that they're going to team up, even though their species are at war and just hate each other. But there is just the bigger threat now is from the king of the demons. So they decide they're going to team up and work together and try to defeat this. There's like a prophecy, and anyway, so they have to fulfill the prophecy to beat this really bad guy. And as they're working together to beat this bad guy, it's very enemies to lovers. Like they start to realize that they could maybe work together to bring the species back together and end the war between their own species. So that's basically book one. And then everything else in the series goes from there. I now have I actually have 11 or 12 books in the series, because I have a bunch of novellas that come in between the main books. So the entire series is based off of that first book. and you just continue to follow the vampires and the slayers. And there's like a lot of twists and secret children from bad guys who you didn't know were there. And yeah, basically the series just evolves from there and is still going strong.
That's great. Yeah. And so when it comes down now to your contemporary, yes. What type, because that the contemporary is the subgenre of romance, but now we get into either the subs of the where it's like small town, and a lot of people call them tropes, but there's a difference too if there's a type of, when it's a small town versus a rom-com and things like that. Those are, I think, are still subgenres where the tropes are the enemies to lovers and things like that. So where does Ayla fit into there for her contemporaries?
That's a good point. So under Ayla, I have 9 books currently. So I have a trilogy that's based in Manhattan, and that one is just, they're fun, pretty short stories, and they're all holiday based. So book 1 is a fake dating story, and book 2 has a male virgin. I love male virgins. I write about them. I have like several books of male virgins, and that's a Valentine's based story. And then book 3, a secret baby story, and that's based around Independence Day. So that's a completed trilogy. And then I have a 6-book series. It's a complete small town romance series. And that is based in this town I made up in Pennsylvania called Arter Creek. And it is comprised of each book is a different couple, but we kind of meet them all along the way, and you see the characters from the town and all the other books. And it's mostly characters in their late 30s up into their mid or late 40s, because I'm in my mid 40s, and I think that we deserve steamy romance too.
Yes, thank you.
Right. So the Arter Creek series is, I love that one because it's steamy romance with characters in their late 30s and 40s, and it's like, I wouldn't say it's a rom-com. I mean, I do kind of like tackle some heavy topics in that series, but it's also lighthearted. It's also, I mean, in book 1, it's a grumpy sunshine, like he's a widower, and this woman moves to town, and they just are like both like her fiance cheated on her, so they both are like, we don't need love, we're over it. But then she hires him to renovate her house. That one's called Hard to Reclaim. So it's the grumpy sunshine, and we all know where that one's going to go. So it's a lot of that throughout the series.
Yeah, and again, something for everybody. And it's just, I think that's also why I love romance, is that you will find something that you love, whether it's part of the subgenre, whether it's a trope, a shifter type, a king type. I mean, there's everything. So
yes, exactly. There's something for everybody out there.
Yeah. But what drew you to writing both the paranormal side of things and also the contemporary? What is it about those genre that you're like, I love it so much?
Yes. Totally. So, I mean, like, I think like most authors, I was an avid reader, like we all are, right? And I fell in love with J.R. Ward's Black Dagger Brotherhood. Yes. Oh, it's so good, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So yeah, when I read Dark Lover years ago, I was just like, what? This series is so, I used to buy it when like the hardbacks came out. I mean, I was so into it. And I mean, I still read it today, but I don't have as much time to read anymore. But that series, I just, loved it. So I was like, if I ever write anything, I want to create, like she created a whole world and all this, they have their own mythology and stuff. And I was like, if I ever write something, I want to create my own world and do all that. So that was definitely an influence in that for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And on the contemporary side?
I think the contemporary, I mean, I used to just kind of like sneak into my mom's bedroom and read all her Nora Roberts books when I was younger. And like, I loved like the tropey, sort of category romances that Nora Roberts used to write. And I think those, like my Ayla Asher books are more, they just allow me to to write just kind of tropey stuff that, there's no world building. They're definitely easier to write because, I also wrote a time travel series under Rebecca. It's like a dystopian, post-apocalyptic, time travel series. And that like required so much research and so much, I needed like age calculators and stuff because they travel through time. So then when I write one of these, small town romances under Ayla, it's just kind of, I like the sort of the ease and the joy of just knowing that there are two people, they have a conflict, they're going to work out the conflict, they're going to have some steamy times, and then we're going to get an AGA.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned J.R. Ward. I love her Black Dagger Brotherhood, but at the same time as I'm discovering her years ago, I picked up this other book by Jessica Bird, and it's a contemporary. J.R. Ward is Jessica Bird, and and I fell in love with the writing style again, and I'm like, that's great. And then when I discovered that they were one and the same, and now she has, I think she republished them under J.R. Ward writing as Jessica Bird. And
oh, nice.
Yes. And so, it was like small town, I think there were siblings. And so it's like 3 or 4 books in that series based on one each of the siblings. And so again, straddling both worlds.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. It's so nice. To find stuff like that out. And then, if you like an author's writing style, I mean, I feel like, it's, you can write different stories, but your style is still going to come through, whether you're writing a fantasy romance or a contemporary romance. Right. So,
yeah, that's where, the writing style is important too, because are they good at world building? How are their character development? Are they keeping, because for me, timeline too, especially when it comes down to that jumping in time, and I'm like, but if in 1999 she was 17.
Exactly. Yes, my Rebecca books that require so much, because as I've gotten more into my paranormal romance series too, the humans end up discovering them, so they sort of have to like go back and forth between the human world eventually, and like that requires time calculators too, because I have to make sure that the immortals are speaking to the human that they met 10 years ago, and that human is now this age. Yeah, that requires a lot of forethought. You have to really make sure you plan that stuff out,
Yeah, it's all those things. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, writing is easy. And I'm like, well, it depends on the individual, but there's also a lot to it, and continuation, and keeping things that if the hero had green eyes in chapter 1, that he still has green eyes in chapter 5, and so on and so forth.
Definitely. It's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where do you get your ideas for the stories?
I think, I like to think about the stories kind of at night when I'm falling asleep, and it's usually that the characters will come to me, and then, once the characters come to me, then I can figure out how I want to have them interact together. And then I sort of just kind of like, just like imagine scenes in my head, and then I'll write them down and kind of make the books from there. I mean, that's really it. I'm a very I like to imagine the scene in my head first before I write it. I feel like it makes it flow easier.
Oh, I can see that. Yeah. Versus just staring at the screen or the paper, depending on how you do it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so we're going in as far as the process goes. So now you have the idea, you know what you're going to be writing. Is there a type of scene that you get really excited about writing, whether it's the first time that the hero and the heroine meet on the page, even though they may have a long history of, fill in the blanks, hatred, love, or whatever, family feuds, or, a bantering scene? What type of scene do you love to write?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, the banter I love. I mean, that's definitely fun. And I do love writing the steamy scenes. they're fun, and they're like, I don't know. It's just nice to I love the steamy scenes because I feel like that is like the ultimate connection between your characters. Right. So the banter scenes, the steamy scenes. And I love writing inner dialogue. I mean, I do write quite a bit of inner dialogue for my characters. And I know some authors really like to do that. And some, I obviously have a lot of dialogue on the page as well, but I like to know, I write third person point of view. So you know what she's thinking, then you know what he's thinking. And then when they come together and then have that dialogue on the page, you already kind of know what they've thought in their head. So I love that. I love being able to know what each of them are thinking as they're having this conversation. And you as the reader, I feel like then you're kind of privy to stuff that they're not saying on the page. I just love that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the flip side, because when we have a favorite, we have a not so favorite. What are those scenes that you might even go as far as going, we'll write this part later and continue with the story?
Oh my God. Yes. I do write out of order. It's just easier for me to do it that way. But so because I do write out of order, the connecting scenes are just definitely my least favorite to write. So like I'm working on A Theory's Earthbreak 7 right now. And I've written a lot of the scenes where the hero and heroine have had interactions. And now I'm at the point where I have to go back and write connecting scenes in between those. And you have to do it because otherwise your story is not going to have continuity, right? It's like, we all need this. And I'm not a super descriptive writer. Like, I don't need to tell people like that the leaves were orange and brown and yellow. Like you're not going to get that. You're going to get that there was a tree. Like I would rather shoot forward and put dialogue on the page than do a description like that's super intricate, because I think that can get to the point of boring as you're reading. But yeah, the connecting scenes of giving the logistics of how they got from this scene to this scene, those are always the toughest. But you got to do it. And my editor is good. She'll say, I love her because she'll say, I need a little bit more description in this scene. She knows I write out of order, and she's like, look, both of these bracketing scenes are great, but you need to like give me a little bit more in here. And then sometimes she'll say, you gave me too much in this connecting scene, I'm bored. So I love her because she sort of helps me figure that out, which is nice.
True. At least there's that, right?
Yes.
It's important to have your team that will not only tell you where it's awesome, but also say, I love you, but.
Right. Exactly.
Because if not, you'll get hit with that but in a not so nice way on a review.
Right. I would rather get it from my editor, who I love and trust, and she's my friend, but she's also very, unflailingly honest, which I love. I mean, that's what you need. When I always say this to authors, newer authors who are starting out, who maybe use beta readers, and they'll come on TikTok, and they'll say, oh, all my beta readers loved my story. I want to reach out to them and say, that's not good, because if they're not giving you any constructive feedback, that's not a good beta reader. They should be giving you something that you can work with to make your story better.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So,
again, and it's part of that conversation and how you deliver the message, and just being, there's a difference between being mean and a bitch to somebody versus saying, I love you.
Yeah.
But he had green eyes in the first chapter, and now he has blue eyes. So did I miss where she, I thought I was reading the contemporary, not the shifter one. So correct me if I'm wrong.
Exactly. There's always something that can be improved from a first draft. That's, that doesn't mean you're a bad writer. I mean, it's gonna, like you said, it'll help you. You definitely don't want a reviewer putting that down. You'd rather hear it from your editor or beta reader or whatever you choose to use. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think a lot of authors have this where they're in their head of the story. And even if they've written it out in the draft, you're going to then go back and you're not really looking so much for grammatical errors or that inconsistency, but you're looking more on the multiple draft that things flow well, that it wasn't a skipping of a scene where why are they making out? I forgot how they got there, and stuff like that. Whereas because you're so engrossed in it that you're filling in the mistakes or the errors in your head and not really doing it on the page, which is where the beta readers come into play and the proofers and all that fun stuff.
Exactly.
So because you're a little away from there. So, it's okay to do a 3-star review. I personally think 3 is good. It means it's a solid story and I liked it.
Yeah, I just love getting a review. I mean, listen, honestly, either way for me, like leave me whatever stars you want. I just want to hear what you thought of it.
Yeah. And it's not how to be smoke up their asses. That's all.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's been times too where I've listened to, the reviewers are like, oh my God, it's a 5-star. And I go, did we read the same book? And I know that a review is basically just an opinion, and we are allowed to have difference of opinions and things like that. But when that review also includes some of the stuff, I'm going, no, that was not the good part. There was something. And so that's where sometimes the reviews get skewed for some of the readers and they're going, what's that 1 star or that 3 star or 2 stars say? Okay, it was a good story, but there was a little bit of, lack of character development. Okay, I can deal with that. And then I'll pick it up.
Right.
And stuff like that. So, and that's helpful for the authors because you're like, oh, I did forget to mention that part, didn't I?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's been fixed. Update your Kindle files.
I know, right? You're like, please update that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. You've written the books, you have them out, people are loving it. That next step of, I should make these into audio. How did that come to you? Aside from being obviously an audiobook lover and a listener, but it's different when it's your work.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, so I made the commitment to myself when I decided to do this, that I would make all of my books into audiobooks, because I don't know if I honestly would have gotten through the day in my sales job if I didn't have audiobooks. They really brought me so much pleasure. And most of the books I listened to were romance books, but I do like nonfiction and stuff like that too. But I always had an audiobook on, and I just knew that if I was really going to do this, I wasn't even going to wait until the books were profitable. I was just going to make audiobooks, and I was going to figure out how to do it, and I was going to teach myself, and the end, there was no question. So as soon as I published The End of Hatred and The Elusive Sun, which are books 1 and 2 in my series, I started looking for a narrator. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't want to sell my rights. I knew I wanted to do it all myself. And I also had saved up a lot of money in corporate America because I knew it was going to be expensive. And I was going to just finance them myself. And I was like, you know what? It's an investment I'm making in my author business. And eventually I'll pay for it once. And, I might have to sell a major organ, but once they're done, they're done. And then I'll just eventually recoup the outlay to however long it takes. Yeah. So I started making everything into audiobooks. My first narrator I found, he had narrated a couple of nonfiction books, but he had never narrated fiction books. And so he was in school to become a preacher, and he auditioned to read my steamy paranormal audiobooks. I loved him. I had maybe 15 people audition, but he was the best. I knew I wanted a male narrator because I loved J.R. Ward's narrators. I was like, okay, I'm going to find a male narrator. And I wrote him and I said, listen, I love your voice and I'm happy to hire you, but I see that you're in seminary school and this is a book that has cursing and open door sex scenes. Are you okay with this? And he was so funny. He wrote back, well, God knows I have to pay my bills.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. So his name is Devin Wilcox, and he narrated the first many books of my series. I think the first 5 books in my series. And I love his voice. It's very deep, but he's not a famous narrator. I didn't, for my first books, I just didn't have enough money to hire well-known narrators because I wanted to do a lower cost. So I knew I would have to hire an unknown narrator. Eventually he got engaged, and he and his fiance opened a photography business. So he kind of retired from narrating. So I don't use him anymore, but my books are still out there that he did, and I love him. So then when I decided, so now I had more Aetherius Earth books coming out. So I needed to find another narrator. I wanted to find one that kind of sounded like him. So I didn't jar my listeners. And then for my Ayla Asher books, knowing contemporary, knowing how popular duet narration was, I decided I would spend more for those audiobooks. They're a little bit shorter than my paranormal romance books, and that I would search for a popular duet narration team to do those. So that's when I found Kai Kennicott and Wynn Russ, and they're amazing. And I love working with them. So they narrate all of my Ayla Asher books. And Wynn actually narrated book 6 in my Aetherius Earth series, my paranormal romance series, because that was when Devin had retired. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And Wynn is amazing. And he was like, I'll do that one for you too. And I was like, you're awesome. So
he's a good
solo
guy.
narrated that one. Yeah. So anyway, so, I have all my books, and my sci-fi trilogy that I wrote, the time travel one, I hired Heather Firth to do that one. And she solo narrates that one, but I think she was an actress before she became a narrator. Her narration is amazing on that trilogy. I was so blown away by her. So yeah, I've worked with quite a few different narrators now. And yeah, as soon as I publish an ebook, it's already in production. I mean, I actually start producing the audiobook before I publish the ebooks. I'm opposite of most indie authors. And that's actually, I tell most indie authors, like, don't, sometimes it's better to have the ebook be profitable before you make the audiobook. I had worked very hard to save up the finances to be able to pay for the audiobook. So, because that wasn't part of my plan, that was part of my strategy of becoming an author. So yeah, as soon as I'm about to get a book back from my proofreader in my PNR series. And as soon as I get it back from her, I will reach out to my narrator and have him start on that before I even have the ebook up for pre-order. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of moving pieces in the background.
Yes.
When it comes down to getting the productions of an audiobook done. And I know that a lot of the listeners get upset when the ebook comes out, or even the paperback, because that's still a different formatting kind of concept. But they're like, but what about us? And I'm like, sometimes some authors have, right by the seat of their pants. And when the story gets done, the story gets done. And then they'll immediately publish it. Others will, story gets done, but we'll schedule the publishing out based on other things that are going on. But also when it comes down to booking the narrators, they're busy. They have other jobs that's inclusive of narration. So you kind of have to be like, hey, when are you available?
Yes, exactly.
And stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have to work around their schedule, and yeah, I mean, there's, like you said, there's so much that goes into it. So I would love to do simultaneous release for ebook and audiobook on every single book I do, but it's just not possible. I do them for some, but you can't do it for all of them. And for me yet.
I mean, honestly, as long as I get it, I'm fine.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I will survive, as the song says. I will survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's when I start asking okay, so I know I'm not going to get the audio right now, but who's being cast?
Right.
And so it's like little teasers kind of start coming through. I'm like, okay, I'm good with that.
Yes. That's a good point. Yeah, you can at least get the scoop.
Yes, exactly. So those are those moments where you're going, okay, you don't know when it's coming out yet, but who have you cast? Okay, good. Yes. Little things like that really make the listeners excited. So you kind of touched on it a little bit about the differences between a popular narrator versus a not so popular narrator. But now that you've been doing this for a while, do you feel more about ensuring that the narrator is the right fit for the character versus a known name versus a non-known name?
Yes. So, I mean, I think for as long as I'm writing my series or series, I will always have, so I've used 3 male narrators for that series now, Devin, Wynn, and I also use Zachary Zaba, who also just has, again, I love his voice. He's not super popular or famous, but he has done a lot of audiobooks actually. And I love his voice. So I think it's like getting the tone right for the series. So for that series, I like having a deep male narrator who can also voice female characters. And that's not easy to find, right? So it is definitely tough to find. And so now that I've worked with these 3 and will continue to work with them, I couldn't imagine ever, hiring a female narrator for that series, because I think it's the tone I've said is that it will always have a male narrator. And I like it that way because it's a kind of a dark, it's not a dark romance series, but it's got dark themes. I think that's why I like the deep male voice. So yeah, for me, it's about getting the tone right. Yeah.
Because a lot of authors that are starting the process of audiobooks will get discouraged because they can't afford a top fill in the blank, top of the line narrator. And I'm like, well, would they have even been a true fit for your character?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. And on with that, okay, so what is it about that top popular narrator's voice that you like?
Right.
Because there's a bunch of up and coming narrators that's might have a larger range, might have a
Right.
better range, might have, the female character, if they're male and they're doing, femme characters, they're how they do their female characters are going to be different than perhaps that popular narrator, and it might be
Yes.
better. And those are the questions that I like to have with the authors when it comes down to casting and things like that, because that whole concept of, oh, but I need to have, top of the line male, and female narrator. I'm like, it's great. They're awesome. Will they help sell the books by having their name on there? Perhaps. But,
Right.
Are they truly a good fit for your characters and also other aspects of the business from marketing? And are they going to tell their listeners that they're reading this book for the author, or they're just going to let it slide? So all these different factors.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Those are all such good points. Yeah. 100%. These are, you have to really think about these things as an author. I mean, listen, everybody wants to use Joe Arden and Andy Arndt, and like, I get it, right? Like, they're super popular, but also, yeah, they might not be the right fit for, if your character is supposed to have a sultry voice and this narrator is known for having
Girl next door.
Fun. Yeah. Like, it's a different, you're right. You have to make sure that they fit. So you're absolutely right about that.
Exactly. And there's also sometimes too that we like, the listeners like variety. I mean, I love Andy Arndt. She's great. She's very talented. But when every author is casting her for every book, after a while I'm going, I think I'm just going to eyeball read it.
Right.
Or not read it at all. Because, I'm like, I'm going to try this new narrator. And I recently had a conversation with like Meg Price, and I'm like, oh my God, her voice. And it's a mixture of like a bit of that girl next door, but sultry and husky, and depending on how she does it. And I'm going, oh, I have some ideas for casting, girl. Okay. And those are the things that, I love that when you're listening to a story and you're getting a brand new story in your earbuds, but you're also getting a really talented voice in the earbuds telling you the story, but also has the acting background and has the experience, and it's a brand new voice.
Yes. 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah. You're going to actually get to meet Meg and a bunch of other narrators at Allure when you're going to go there in September. Are you excited about going? Yeah.
Super excited. And obviously, since I love audiobooks so much, this was the perfect signing for me. I mean, I'm doing quite a few signings this year, but like, I was like, audiobook signing, please sign me up. I'm in. What do I need to do?
It's the first of its kind as far as focusing specifically just on audiobooks. The other book signings have recently realized that there is a audience that will attend conventions and space like that when the narrators and the audio and the authors that also include audiobooks are part of that lineup. And so when Allure came up, I think they had announced it almost a year and a half, almost 2 years at this point, that they were going to be focused on this. I was so excited. And now it's literally around the corner.
And it's so close. We're almost there.
Like having realization that you still have yet to buy your plane ticket.
I know. I haven't bought my ticket yet. I know. I'm going to wait.
I'm not the only one. Okay. Good.
Right. Oh. Oh my gosh.
I got my flapper dress and my gala for the Fire and Ice dress done.
Awesome.
But not the flight that's going to get me there.
Right. I know. And it's so worrisome with the way flights are being canceled anyway. It's just, I don't know. It's crazy.
But you're going to be meeting so many brand new voices and talents, as well as some of your peers that you've met online or even in person before, and it's just going to be so much fun.
Yeah,
I'm
really excited about it.
Yeah, but is there something specific that you're really looking forward to? I mean, they're having panels, they're having workshops, obviously the meet and greets with the listeners and the readers. What's that one thing that you're going, yes, this is why I'm going, and this is going to be the thing?
Just excited to meet people who love audiobooks too. And I think it's going to be fun. I can't wait to go into the listening booths and listen to all the little samples they're going to have. It's going to be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been the conversations I've had recently with everybody that's going. That's part of the excitement, is also peopling a little bit, but they're also scared of it.
Oh yeah.
It's like so exciting. Yeah. It'll be fun. I'm excited for you guys to meet all these new voices and, peers of authors. And there's going to be a bunch of production companies there, or individuals that work in the industry as professional, industry professionals. So there's a lot of stuff that many potential up and coming, or even some that have been doing audiobooks for a while but did not know that they could do it this way.
Yes.
That's gonna be fun.
Definitely. So yeah, I'm excited.
Perfect.
Nice.
So aside from going to the events, signing, getting the books out and writing them, and then casting and all this other fun stuff, as far as the working side of things goes, when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
Yes. Okay. So, well, as an indie author, I work all the time. So I wish someone had told me when I was in corporate America that I would be leaving. I thought I worked hard in that job.
Right?
This is like a whole other level, right? Yeah. But I do, when I do have time, I have to make myself I work 7 days a week, but I do sometimes make myself take a couple of hours off and do fun stuff. So I love wine tastings. So I'll go we have a lot of like nice restaurants around where I live that'll do wine tastings. I love karaoke. So I'll go into the city, and we have a lot of great karaoke bars in Manhattan that I'll go sing with my friends. What else? That's really it. I love to travel, but I haven't done that a lot, obviously, since the pandemic. But I am actually going, my brother and his wife are having a bunch of people sort of gather at this like small town in Western North Carolina this weekend. So I'm actually taking a few days off. Well, I'll still be working, but I'm going to not working as much. And I'm going to drive down there and go hang out with them for the weekend. So yeah, I like just kind of chilling and hanging out and drinking some wine, singing some karaoke. I'm pretty chill.
Yeah, and those are also things that you can do a lot of the stuff at the same time. You can drink the wine and karaoke.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I love doing with my guests is to get to know them better, because this can go so many different ways depending on how it's played out, or the 2 truths and a lie. And where you'll share 3 things about yourself, obviously 2 being true and 1's a lie. And we have to figure out which is the lie. And y'all have gotten creative on how to go about that I'm going, okay, what formula is she going to be using? And considering that you write both PNR and contemporary, it could go either way here. So if you're ready to share,
all right,
let me know. What are those 3 things?
I am ready. Okay, so 2 truths and a lie. Okay, so number 1, I went to space camp. Number 2, I lived for a month in New Zealand. And number 3, I once hit a nun with my car.
No. Oh my goodness. Okay, so yeah, she went from cute and sweet to I might have hit a nun with the car. Okay. Oh my goodness. Okay. I think I'm going to go with that one being the lie.
So should I reveal?
Yes. What is the lie?
So the lie is that I lived in New Zealand for a month. I actually did live in Japan for a month, but not in New Zealand.
See. So you hit a nun with the car. No,
yes, right. So first of all, I did go to space camp when I was 14. That was really fun. I'm a big science dork. And yes, I hit a nun with my car when I was leaving a appointment at a hospital in Manhattan when I was in corporate medical sales. And the sun glare in Manhattan is awful anyway. But she wasn't wearing a habit. She was actually wearing like a black hoodie, like black sweatpants. And I turned around the corner. I was going very, very slow. And the sun glare was terrible. And I just did not see her. And I hit her with my car. She fell to the ground. And I, of course, immediately pulled over and went over and I said, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, I'm fine." Like I helped her up. And I said, let's just take you into the hospital and we'll get x-rays for you or whatever you need. And she goes, "No, I'm fine. I live right there." And I was like, "Oh, right there. Like, well, that's a church." And she goes, "Yeah, I live at the rectory. I'm a nun." I was like, "Oh my God, I'm just going to burn in hell." I'm just going to nun with my car. Yeah. But anyway, she ended up being fine. And we actually wrote letters back and forth for a while after that because I wanted to make sure she was okay. So it ended up not being a disaster, but I can always say that I
makes for a good story.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. I mean, I almost had a heart attack. Oh my God.
Oh God.
So happy she was okay.
I'm sure. I mean, if you have not as of yet, I'm sure you'll one day write something like Angels and Demons, and she becomes an angel. But she's like, how did I become an angel? I hit a nun with my car.
Yes. Right. It's like, oh my God. Yes.
Oh, that was nothing, girl. You're good.
Okay. Perfect.
Oh my goodness. Well, that was interesting. Yeah. See how this is where I say you guys get tricky, that you lived abroad, but it wasn't in New Zealand. It was in Japan. So those little details are always what gets people sometimes. And you're going, really? Okay, fine.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, talk about a story for dinner. That one
for
time.
Sure. Right. It definitely makes for a good story. Very few people, I think, could say that they've hit a nun with their car.
I know, right?
Of course I have.
Only in movies or paranormal, books where there's that one time that, they were running away from the demons and they hit.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Oh, goodness.
It's like, really? Yeah. Like, stop. You all need to stop. So you all heard that evil laugh, right? You all heard that evil laugh.
I know, right? It's like,
She's thinking of a scene.
You have to get your creativity from wherever you can, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I'm all for that. Before we go, can you tell us what you're currently working on and what's coming up next for you that you can share?
Sure. So I am currently working on Aetheria's Earth Book 7, which is good. I'm getting there on that one. It's taking me a little bit longer to write this one for some reason, but in the middle of that, I also just finished a novella, which will be Aetheria's Earth 7.5. That's going to be in a Christmas charity anthology. It's like a paranormal romance Christmas anthology, and it's a charity. The proceeds will benefit Ukraine. So I'm excited about that. So that will come out. So I think I'll finish book 7, hopefully soon, and that'll go to my editor. So I think that'll come out in probably like September, October, if I can get my stuff together. And then I'm also writing a new series under Ayla Asher, which I'm not giving a ton away about that yet, but yeah, I'm going to rapid release those. So I'll release a couple in a row for that. Yeah. So I think I'll have some new releases under both names in the October, November area. So perfect for some holiday reading.
Oh, fun. We love holiday readings.
Yes. Right.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. I've already seen a couple on my feed, Christmas books coming out, and I'm going, nice. Oh yeah. Because again, it takes time to write them and then produce them into audio. So they have to be done now.
Right. I know, it's crazy that I was writing this Christmas novella that's going in this charity anthology, and it's 100 degrees outside, and I'm like, I cannot believe I'm writing a Christmas novella right now, but that's the time it takes to produce things. And yeah, I
had a narrator friend saying, Viv, I am sweating my balls off, literally, in the booth, or narrating a Christmas book,
right,
where there's snow.
I mean, it's a little nuts. Yeah. Right.
Let me know when it comes out.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
It's nice down there. You're fine.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for taking the time to hang out with me. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in person at Allure. It's been so much fun.
Thank you. I cannot wait to meet you. And thank you so much for having me. This has been awesome.
Thank you. And if you're not following Rebecca on social media, I will be providing you guys with all the links. All you got to do is click and follow. And that information will be over at the episode's post at Viviana, Enchantress of Books. And until next time, happy listenings.
Thank you to all of our Audiobook Lovin Podcast Patreon. Special thanks to Nixley Zenner, Carol Liebner, Brittany Robinette Leiter, Michelle Bastard,
Brandy Schmidt, April Branson.
The Audiobook Lovin Podcast has special Patreon access levels. Join today to receive benefits including early access to episodes, shout-outs, special exclusive content, and much more. Support the podcast by becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Audiobook Lovin. We thank you for your support.
Thank you for joining us on the Audiobook Lovin Podcast, hosted by Viviana, Enchantress of Books. For links and more information discussed in today's episode, previous podcasts, or the Audiobook Lovin Series, please visit our website, vivianaenchantressofbooks.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a positive review wherever you listen to our podcast. Until next time, happy listening.